Welcome to the Daoscape Arts podcast. This is part 2 of a 3-part podcast titled The Shaolin Solution, recorded whilst relaxing at Zhehua Temple in Beijing, China, with British Shaolin Kung Fu coach AJ Donnelly. AJ arrived in China in 1999 in pursuit of his dream to study Kung Fu at the Shaolin Temple. This episode covers gaining confidence in martial arts, the shattering of AJ's initial Shaolin Kung Fu dream, the role of violence and competitive fighting in Shaolin Kung Fu, and the spirit of repetition that's essential for practicing Zen arts. You must have been very deeply inspired and had some kind of flame burning inside you to be able to do that, do you think?
You made so many points there, I'm just trying to keep up with them in my head.
Okay.
First and foremost, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a big person, I see a very small person.
Okay.
I have very little I don't see myself as a big person. I don't even know how to describe it. I've never considered myself big or powerful or any of these things. Right. I'm a very shy person, and no one ever believes this. But I am, see, even you're laughing at the suggestion.
Well, yes.
I'm a terribly shy person.
Right.
And I always feel nervous and awkward around people. But in terms of confidence in character, that has only developed in maybe the last 7 or 8 years.
Right.
I never had that either back when I was training or after I came here. I still had very little confidence because I was missing that key ingredient, I think, that idea of intention. I think all throughout my childhood, I was bullied every single day, from when I started school until when I left. Constant bullying, which is how I got into martial arts in the first place, but that didn't change the situation. And then when I was training with David, so there was one guy in my class who was very big and very bulky, and he had like a real, demeanor to him, and he was shaved head and he had tattoos. And one time David had a sparring together, and I'd always been intimidated by this guy because of his like surly, manly nature. And David was like, okay, so you two pair up, you're gonna start sparring. And so we started sparring, and I wiped the floor with him.
Oh, wow.
And within 30 seconds, it was over. And then we were sitting outside. We'd always have tea with David at the end of the class. And this guy said, oh, yeah, well, you did that in the sparring, but on the street, obviously, it'd be much different. And I'm sitting there going, wow, yeah, he's right. And then he left, and I said to David, he's telling the truth, If we were, actually in a street fight, that guy would kill me. And David said, well, why? You just did the same techniques in a sparring situation that you would do on the street. So what would the difference be? And I was like, and I had no answer for that. And it was true. In a street situation, if you have the correct intent, you're meant to apply the same techniques. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. But my confidence didn't start developing until probably recent memory. Yeah.
Right.
And what was your next point after that?
No, I think we've covered it. But let's get back to, so you were in China, you're teaching, and then you finally decide to do your trip to Shaolin Temple. Can we hear a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'd been here probably 6, 7, 8 months. It was in early 2000 that I finally thought, yes, okay, I have time. I'm going to go to the Shaolin Temple. And I swear I wish that I had a camera then, or that I had a diary, because I'm remembering this as much as I can, but now I keep wondering to myself, how much of this story actually happened, and how much of it is actually a movie that I saw after that. But the way that it plays out in my head, myself and my then girlfriend, we travelled down to the Shaolin Temple, and back then it was so different. There was no scenic area like there is now, and it's so beautiful at the Shaolin Temple now. It was just the Shaolin Temple situated in this little stone village. And the buses would drive right up to the temple door.
Oh,
so
right.
anyway, yeah, it was
because
so
now
different.
You have to get out.
Exactly. Now the entrance to the scenic area is like half an hour down the road, just to preserve the beauty of the area. So anyway, we roll into the temple. It's completely empty, and there's a monk walking past, and so I got my girlfriend to translate and said, tell him I want to study here. What do I need to do? Now, in retrospect, I keep saying to myself, how exactly was I planning on studying there? Because I was still really poor after I arrived in China. I had a full-time job, so I obviously went there with zero idea or plan of how this was going to pan out. But I was there, and I was still going to ask the question, and I'm still going to go ahead with it. So the monk said, okay, no problem, please follow me. So it took me through what I remember as being all like these side passages to like this back room. But now, knowing the temple as well as I do, there aren't these side passages and back rooms, so I'm like, where the hell did I end up going? But anyway, so I'm standing outside this big cloistered temple room, and the monk says, okay, just stand here for a moment. And he disappears inside, and a few minutes later, a monk comes out with him, puts his hands together, Amitabha for Amitabha in English, I guess? Is that in English?
I think it is, yeah.
And he says, please come on in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually going to happen. I'm really here. Holy crap. I've been dreaming about this with my best friend since we were like, 10, 11, 12, sitting in his living room, watching these kung fu movies and always dreaming of going to the Shaolin Temple. I'm like, I've actually made it. This is going to happen. So we go in, and straight away, the monk sits down at his computer, and he's got a 4-poster bed and a multi-gym, and he gets out his calculator, and he starts saying, okay, so what do you want to train, and how much do you want to pay, and da-da-da-da. And being the naive child I was back then, this just shattered my illusion. I thought I'd have to go through like some test to get admitted and these kind of things.
Sit outside in the rain for 3 days.
Exactly, or go and sit in Damo's cave for 7 years to prove my worth. Yeah. And here he was just saying, okay, how much are you going to pay us? Yeah. What do you want to learn?
So at that time they already had a kind of like a system for bringing in foreign students and...
Yeah, even back then, anyone could study there if you roll up and you're willing to pay. I mean, obviously it's a lot more formalized now than it was then.
Yeah. And that was the real school. That wasn't one of these like fake side schools, with like thousands.
No, this was inside the Shaolin Temple. Because obviously I go back there all the time now, and I remember the exact space I was standing in when the original monk walked past me. And I remember him leading me to this other room, which would still have been inside the temple, because we never left the temple gate.
Right.
Then I left with her, and I said, wow, this is nothing that I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Life is a sham. Martial arts are a complete joke.
Shaolin dream shattered into pieces. Yeah.
Exactly. And that put the fracture in my wall of martial arts and Buddhism and these kind of things. And then about 6 or 7 months later, the wall came completely down when I was walking through the streets of the city that I was living in. And I saw a Buddhist monk walking towards me, and out of respect, I put my hands together.
Oh, really?
And I said, Amitabha. And he started laughing at me.
I bet he did, yeah.
And he was like, ha, 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 look at the foreigner, ha, he thinks he speaks Chinese. And for me at that point, I was like, that's it. Life, everything I've believed until this point was a lie. There is nothing real in this world. And then for about 10 years, I probably just went completely off the rail.
Right.
And abandoned all thoughts of culture and China and the value of China and Buddhism and just everything.
But you were living in China at the time, right?
Yes, yeah. I've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
I just started on a joyride, and I didn't care about the future, really.
Yeah. Wow.
And that lasted for a very long time. I mean, I kept up my Tai Chi training because my teacher basically lived next door to me, so I didn't have much choice. But I didn't have, again, it came back to intention. I was at the point where I was like, well, what's the point of any of this? It doesn't mean anything to anyone. No one values it.
Yeah.
Even they don't value it. So why the hell am I going to give a damn about it? So, that was a very
Would you say at that point you kind of like flipped from a kind of Buddhist outlook to a more of a Taoist one while doing the Tai Chi? Or?
I had always been a Taoist, as much as you can say that. From when I first started looking into Chinese philosophies, and I read the Tao Te Ching for the first time. And
when was that? After coming to China?
No. This was back in 96. I
Right.
think. I was at the local library just going through all the philosophy books, and I brought down the Tao Te Ching, and I was reading, and I was like, oh damn, hang on a sec, that makes a lot more sense than Catholicism.
Right.
Which, no one has said ever. But yeah, so I was on a completely Taoist path, and back then I didn't even know that there was a difference between Taoism and the Buddhism of the Shaolin Temple.
Right.
I thought it was just pretty much all the same
Just
thing.
Chinese stuff.
I'd never paid attention to Buddhism.
Right.
Up until like the last 4 or 5 years, I'd always classified myself as a Taoist. And it was only after we really started serious cooperation with the temple, and I started spending more time there and learning what Chan and what's called Zen in the West really meant, that I started saying, oh, actually, yeah, Buddhism, that really connects more with my life and where I want to be. And yeah, so...
Right. So we've just left the Shaolin Temple. You've gone off the rails.
Completely, yeah.
And but you're still doing Tai Chi, and then somehow you come back to the Shaolin path. So how does that happen?
Wow, that must have been 12, 13 years later after that initial visit. And I'm sitting down with my best friend and my future wife, talking about our plans for the company. And I say, oh, what we could do? We could start taking foreigners to the Shaolin Temple to study. And they say, are you insane?
Sorry, who said, are you insane?
My future wife.
And
said
someone
that.
else?
And my best friend, who is another
okay.
partner in Cultural Keys. And they were like, you can't just take people to the Shaolin Temple. And I said, well, why not? That's something we should consider doing.
Yeah.
And I said, why don't we go to the Shaolin Temple and see what it is? Because I haven't been there in 15 years. Maybe things are different now. So I did some research online, and there was nothing good being said about the temple.
Right.
Either studying there
Yeah.
or just visiting there. It's all negative reviews.
And that's what I was saying right at the beginning of our talk today. It seems strange to me. Well, I couldn't believe it when I met you, and you were saying, "Oh yes, I'm taking people to Shaolin Temple, and it's all legit." And I just thought, well, hang on a minute. People have just been saying bad stuff about Shaolin Temple for the past 10 to 15 years, as far as I've been aware.
It's an unfortunate part of my working life that I probably spend half my day on social media debunking negative comments and connotations with regards to traditional Chinese martial arts and the Shaolin Temple, but But again, it's through experience and being there and seeing the real side of it and understanding the intention of what they're doing and Shaolin martial arts in general that I can actually say that.
Yeah. I think there's also something, about the performance. There's a famous, is it Shaolin Wheel of Life or something like this? There's a show that tours the world.
Oh, right, yes.
And maybe it's because that show kind of promotes a certain kind of mystical view of the Shaolin monk. It's very showy, and maybe people think, well, this is just it's a gimmick and it's not really anything true. Or if you want me to aspire towards this Shaolin Kung Fu ideal, you've got to demonstrate something in UFC or people feel a bit cheated, I think, because they get on board. It's so easy to get on board because it looks so incredible, and they're so they're so energized and healthy, and it makes a great impression. However, when people start to think, well, how maybe I can kind of go in that direction, maybe suddenly they start, when they look on the internet, they find, oh yeah, all this stuff. They look on YouTube and Shaolin monk is, I think there's a Shaolin monk who does MMA fighting. I can't remember his name, Yilong or something like this. And he's not a real Shaolin monk. And, I think when people start looking into it, suddenly they feel cheated and kind of, become cynical about it.
You can only be cheated by something you've experienced. And then you have to ask, am I cheating myself or is the experience cheating me? Because again, it's the intention that you go there with. This is obviously a huge topic with regards to what the Shaolin Temple actually is and what it represents and what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
But it's a complaint that I hear every single day. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons we started the program as intently as we did, because we want people to go to the temple, experience the true Shaolin Temple, and then go away and actually tell people, well, actually, you know what? It actually is exactly what they say they are.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, there's the idea where people say, well, a Shaolin monk should go into UFC and try and win the UFC. I mean, what would you say? What would you say to someone who
Why?
says that?
It's that simple a question. Why? What does a Shaolin monk have to prove? A Shaolin monk doesn't train martial arts to be a martial artist. He trains Shaolin martial arts to develop discipline and focus and body constitution. Is that the right word?
Possibly.
Yeah, to
Good
develop a
health,
strong
yeah.
body and good health and all these kind of things on a path that is Buddhism and enlightenment. There is zero benefit to a Shaolin monk going into the UFC or to these kind of competitions.
Maybe people could say, well, if he wins the UFC, then people will, respect Shaolin Kung Fu and train Shaolin Kung Fu and take on and follow the path of a Shaolin monk.
But then you have the other issue. The point of Shaolin martial arts is Buddhism. The idea is to use Shaolin martial arts to cultivate Buddhism.
Right.
So if you start showing Shaolin martial arts as like the ultimate fighting ability,
Yeah.
then people will start training it, but with the intent of becoming the ultimate fighter as opposed to cultivating Buddhism.
Isn't that part of the cruelty aspect of Shaolin Kung Fu? I mean, maybe people say, well, it should be tested, I mean, I see it, I see it kind of almost like a kind of a therapy. I mean, like you said, you were bullied at school, you went into Kung Fu looking for a solution to that problem. And I mean, part of it, I think, is exposing people to conflict, exposing people to violence, physical violence, someone, throwing fists at your face and weapons
I
even.
wouldn't use the word violence. Violence is the intent of hurting others for the purpose of hurting others. But martial arts, and specifically Shaolin, is with the intent of ending suffering, either to yourself or to others. So I use the word violence very specifically,
Right.
where the intention is to cause pain for the sake of causing pain. Just saying.
I mean, I think it matches with cruelty. I mean, it kind of, it's got something in common with cruelty maybe as well. But, I mean, I know what you're saying. I was saying it in a context of maybe what appears violent. I mean, I remember going to my first proper Kung Fu class and having people really, hammering me on my chest.
Yeah?
And just suddenly, things would come up in my mind thinking, is this person bullying me? The teacher told them to hit me and they're hitting me, and, it's a kind of conditioning training. And yeah, I mean, it's very easy for the mind to say this is violent and this is intense and this is, this is something wrong, this is something bad. But I think just like some exposure therapy, if you continue and you try to relax within that and work forward through it, then suddenly you become...
create a safe training environment, though. There's
Sure.
no point putting someone who just walked in the door with, one of your black belts, and I use that, I hate the word black belt, but just
Yeah.
in terms of context.
Yeah.
Because what's he going to learn? He's going to learn that he's going to get battered by someone who's more experienced than he is.
Yeah.
So it still has to be a safe environment.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also in terms of just a fist coming towards you. I mean, you can get that from doing something like Taekwondo, but when I think in Kung Fu they look for more things like punching someone in the throat or something like this. When a fist is going towards your throat, or someone might accidentally hit you in the throat as well. When you know that someone's aiming for those weak areas of your body, like your eyes, your throat, and your groin, that can be kind of interpreted by someone who's fresh into the class. It can be very quickly interpreted as, oh my gosh, this is violent, and this is violence. Which maybe, just over time, they'll just become a lot more accepting of violence in the world. And that can maybe be the first step to staying calm, saying, okay, violence happens. And that's the first step. And then now I can think about dealing with it instead of just totally freaking out, going, oh, this shouldn't exist.
Yeah, obviously
you know.
exposure to those kind of conditions is a conditioning exercise in itself,
Sure.
Just having someone, put their hands in your face continuously, just so you're not going like this, like there's mosquitoes around you or something. That's a good way to start that kind of conditioning activity.
Sure. Yeah. Cool. So where did we get with our timeline? So you've come back to the Shaolin fold and you're taking people to the Shaolin temple. Maybe we can talk a bit about, there's this idea that the discipline of Kung Fu or Zen arts in general demand a kind of daily repetition? Yourself, you have your own kind of daily schedule where you repeat Kung Fu training?
Well, I mean, that's a standard psychological process. Anything that you intend to become a habit for life has to be practiced continuously, like 100 days, they say now.
Oh, right.
You have to do the same thing every day for 100 days before it becomes a new life habit. And yeah, I mean, that's the same, I mean, excuse me, the same at the Shaolin Temple, or with any real, and I say real, I mean, what does that even mean? But with any dedicated training, you know, you have to practice a set, they say, 10,000 times in order to master it.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything you want to do long term in your life requires repetition, I believe. Without repetition, it's too easy to get distracted. So whether that's, losing weight or eating healthier or getting up early or going to the gym or anything that you want to be better in your life has to start with repetition until it becomes natural.
Would you say you learned that from attending classes, or would you say you've imposed that from another kind of philosophy, or how do you install that discipline in your own life?
I don't really have a choice because my entire company is founded on martial arts, basically. That's where we started.
Right.
And I would never, I would say force, but I would never tell other people to do something that I hadn't done for myself. So like weight, for example. 3 years ago I was approaching 120 kilograms.
Oh, really?
And it was just getting to the point where I was like, yeah, I cannot live the rest of my life like this. So I had to find a way to lose weight, and it was through repetition. Following a schedule and doing the same thing every single day until I started losing weight. Because too many people, and I don't know if this is a Western thing or just humans in general, if they don't see results from something within like 10, 15 days, because we're in a culture of everything happens immediately. Everything you want, it happens right now.
Sure.
So if people don't see results of something they're doing, immediately they give up, like with diets. People too commonly will try a diet for 10, 15 days, and when they don't see the results, they'll quit that diet and then try something else.
Sure.
If you don't keep on doing the same thing, you won't see the changes that you want.
Would you say this spirit of repetition and discipline, you've used it in other areas in your life as well? Would you say the Kung Fu discipline kind of filtered through to other areas?
I think every aspect of my life, maybe too much, is built on repetition of having a structure and always doing things the same way. I mean, I'm a little bit OCD in myself. And I like things to be exactly where they are, because then I can see when something's out of place. So I have a schedule that goes that way, and I try and stick to that schedule, because then when I know something is off, I can try and find a way to remedy it. But yeah, I think that does come from martial arts. The idea that you have to repeat something, repeat, because that's the only way that it's going to get better and become the thing you need it to be.
Yeah.
And that's the issue with MMA versus traditional martial arts, and I'm sure that's a topic you've got planned for a future discussion.
Know, possibly,
but in the media a lot recently is, I think it's Master Xu, the Chinese MMA fighter. Forgive me if I've given him the wrong name.
Yeah, I know.
But he's challenging all these traditional, what he calls fake masters, and he's wiping the floor with them every time he gets in a ring, and everyone's like, oh well, Chinese martial arts, they're shit because they can't It's like, no, of course there's it's one of my pet rants at the moment, but it's this understanding of, because they can't fight him, then obviously they're fake. They're not fake, they're just training is really, really bad. He is an MMA fighter who probably 10, 12 hours every day is punching something, He is training to hit something and to kick something really hard so it stops moving. That's the focus of his training. Whereas the traditional masters, and I use air quotes for that, are practicing their forms every day and teaching other people to practice their forms every day. And I don't know them personally, I haven't read their biographies, but I wonder, well, how much time do they practice every day? Punching a punch bag and practicing, you know, really slamming their kicks into things and doing sparring. Because if he's doing sparring 10 hours a day and they're doing sparring 1 hour a month, do the math. Who is going to win in that kind of competition?
Exactly. Yeah.
If you aren't practicing what it is you want to do, there is no way any traditional master is going to beat him as long as they are training two completely different things.
This is the end of Podcast 1, Part 2, The Shaolin Solution with AJ Donnelly, which is continued in Part 3 of this series.